Greetings, YouTube. This is the Garage Autonomist. I want to address a few questions and statements that I saw in the comments section of my hangout with Vuk on Wednesday. Number 1. No Black Lives Matter, feminism, or leftism, period, means no Trump. In other words, if women would keep their mouths shut and know their place, like back in the 1950s, and dared not to vote for another woman, and if the black people weren't so militant and arrogant in creating an independent movement challenging racism and state violence on their terms, Trump could have never been elected without them. Notice how these arguments always seem to come from the same group, privileged protected males who seem to have a fear and hatred of other groups they want to police and control. People of color, women, and working poor, in other words, the marginalized, are not fighting and responding to their oppression the way the wizened white patriarch feels they should. Number 2, the Black Lives Matter movement was dysfunctional compared to other contemporary movements, and it had a negative influence on the moderate liberal spectrum of the left. This is the old bad Indian versus good Indian argument. Instances of people who may have said reckless shit or had done reckless things at Black Lives Matter actions or said something stupid in the name of Black Lives Matter comes with the territory of social change. There will always be a movement especially posing a threat to the established order and those who like it that way, that once it gains attention, it might attract people who are just genuinely angry or total nutcases. It happens. That's not even counting agent provocateurs. This is doubly so for movements like OWS and Black Lives Matter because they are based on anti-hierarchical and anti-authoritarian consensus-based methods as their organizational structure, or rather horizontalism. Also, both movements were based on hashtag activism, the use of social network technology to organize events or direct actions. This can draw a wide range of people, which is a good thing, and along with that, you may get bad actors. It is interesting to me how people tend to focus on those few instances alone of bad actors getting all the attention when it comes to Black Lives Matter, just like when the rash of sexual assaults that happened at Zuccotti Park when OWS was in full swing, and the right-wing media pushed that story big time, as if all that were happening at Occupy were rapes.
Learn to behave yourself, sir! Stop raping people! Stop raping people! Stop raping! Stop raping people!
I believe that whenever I hear this uneven attention to Black Lives Matter versus the rest of the liberal sector regarding the typical imperfections that come attached to all movements throughout history, that what I'm really hearing is the need to police and attack any form of political resistance that people of color do independently, and therefore this act of policing is rooted in racism. We've certainly seen this same kind of tendency from misogynist males looking to saddle women's liberation movements back into patriarchal control. Isn't that right, Felflop? Your incessant whining that you did about 9 months ago on a few videos of mine regarding feminist counter-protests aimed at men's rights gatherings was all about policing the few actions of a certain group of feminists and demanding that all feminists take accountability for some of those instances. That whining was about policing women. So if Black Lives Matter was overrun by nuts or angry clowns, that's par for the course in all movements that garner attention. Believe me, I've seen it 10 plus years ago before OWS or Black Lives Matter. Number 3, the idea that Black Lives Matter had somehow supplanted Occupy. This was a really alarming and confusing comment. Let's look at the timeline of these two very unrelated movements, shall we? My wife and I got involved in OWS in September of 2011, about a week after people occupied Zuccotti Park. My wife, more so than me, was heavily involved throughout the movement's first year. And so, as it goes, I've seen this particular thing happen in smaller movements in decades prior. And that thing is this. OWS lost its numbers, mainly consisting of the liberal layer, by the time Obama was reelected. In other words, the liberals saw their candidate secured in office and they wandered away from OWS. That was 2012. And the remaining people at Zuccotti Park were forcibly evicted by the end of December 2012, where a lot of them relocated to Union Square Park, and it fizzled out there. Black Lives Matter came out of the acquittal of George Zimmerman in 2013, but as a hashtag movement to raise awareness that black lives are so devalued that a vigilante can kill a black teenager out of racist rage and no justice would be served. But it wasn't until 2014 that Black Lives Matter made itself known in the streets using direct action during the Ferguson uprisings, which were a reaction to the murder of Michael Brown. So, 2011 through 2012 was OWS period. There was no connection between these movements other than their horizontalism and hashtagivism. Lastly, number 4. The right wing needed Black Lives Matter to push white males like Felflop to the right in order to put Trump in power. No. Felflop is a reactionary. Him and any other MRA, when it comes to their gender politics alone, orientates them to the right spectrum. So there was no big push needed, really. Okay, so I will say that with the comments being interesting enough, Vuk is most certainly invited to come back again in the near future. So I thank him for giving me a great discussion. And thank you all for the lively conversation in the comments section of that video. This is the Garage Autonomist.
They were originally straight males who at some time in their life were rejected by a woman, and as a result became bitter and twisted instead of seeking help.